Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th ALH Conference. I'm Lindsay Anderson, editor of Access Lift and Handlers, and on behalf of ALH and KHL Group, thank you for joining us virtually this year. While it's disappointing we couldn't hold this event in person, hosting the ALH Conference on a web platform has allowed us to reach a much wider audience. We have hundreds and hundreds of registered people for today's event from all over the world. People are viewing from Australia, Chile, Egypt, Europe, China, South Africa. I could keep going. It's truly remarkable. Thank you again for registering. Of course, it goes without saying that I hope you and yours remain healthy and safe during this time. Today's conference will address not only the impact COVID-19 has had on our industry, but how we have responded to it and what new measures have been put in place. From rental tips and market forecasts to training during lockdowns, we hope you will find valuable information from our panel of industry experts. Today's event is scheduled to last roughly 2 hours with our keynote presentation following my short welcome. There are 2 5-minute breaks for you to either network virtually, view our sponsors section, stretch your legs, or ask a question. If you haven't done so, I suggest please familiarize yourself with the platform. There's various functions on both right and left-hand sides. You'll see a panel with chat, Q&A, and notes icons. Please use the Q&A section to submit your questions for our speakers. Each speaker will have a few minutes after their presentations to answer them. You're welcome to submit questions at any time. To the left of the viewing panel, you'll see links that will allow you to read about our speakers, our sponsors, network with other attendees, view the schedule, and more. You can also do a pop-out of the video so you can actively watch it while perusing the other screens. So speaking of the schedule, I personally want to thank all of my speakers today for taking their time to give us really great presentations. If we were in person, there'd be a very large round of applause right now, so please just imagine that's happening. And now I'd also like to thank our sponsors, because without you, these events wouldn't be possible. Thank you to gold sponsors Skyjack and Genie, supporting sponsor Harrison Hydrogen, Mobile Automation, and ZTR Control Systems, and our survey sponsor, Sirius Labs. I'd also like to thank our media partner, iPath, for their support, and again, a virtual round of applause for everyone. You can see more about the sponsors in the sponsors section, so please take a look and interact as you would like to. If you're on social media outside of the platform, please use the hashtag ALHCon, that's ALHCON, to share information, express your thoughts, provide opinions, give criticism or praise. Again, ALHCon. And there's also the social wall to the left on the platform. Now, since we don't have to run down any housekeeping items, because I'm sure you all know how to exit your own offices and homes if there's a fire, it's time to get on with the show. Without further ado, let's kick off our keynote from Nordy Turner, Senior Vice President of Services and Advanced Solutions for United Rentals. Nordy joined United Rentals in April 2019 following a 6-year stint as CEO of Netherlands-based rental company Rewall. He is also the president of the International Powered Access Federation. Today, he will be speaking about lessons learned during COVID-19 in regard to rental operations and more. Nordy, it's over to you.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. And apparently all of us speakers are giving great presentations, according to Lindsay. So no pressure here. But everybody, thank you for joining wherever you are. And apparently from all over the world, that's really cool to understand that, and quite different. But such it is in the days of COVID. But it's a pleasure to be here in front of you. And I really appreciate the opportunity. The agenda looks really, really great. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the presentations as well. So we're going to get right into it, though. It's been truly amazing to see companies, teams, and events just like this one today pivot with such agility. COVID has brought on unique challenges, but it's also unveiled a lot of opportunities. And plenty of those opportunities are finding new ways of working to really hone in on those levers that we can pull to keep productivity moving. And opportunities to ensure that our customers and employees continue to have what they need to work safely. So companies and teams have found ways to work together and to face challenges head on. And they also understand what worked in the past might not work now, or at least it would work differently. So there's been iterations and flexibility. That has become the new normal. And it's amazing to see just how much can truly be accomplished even when the world is ever changing. And as our CEO, Matt Flannery, said, it's not a tunnel. It's a tunnel, it's not a hole. So there's light on the other side of this. And the team at United Rentals really grabbed hold of that and ran with it and really rallied behind it. So we knew we needed to find new ways to work together as a team and to deliver on customer needs both safely and efficiently. And the key is being safely. So we were up to the challenge, and with a clear focus, such as Matt provided, success depends on culture, and culture is enabled through the right structures and processes. And as Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So others can copy your strategy, but they can't replicate your culture. That's unique, and it's authentic, and it has to be. Or else the success and structure around it can't be achieved. So staying with culture, it's so critical, and it's something that we value and work on every day at United Rentals, and it's who we are. So it's beyond equipment, it's beyond our expertise, and it ties everything together, and it starts with safety. So safety has always been a key part of United Rentals culture and our DNA. And it's safety for our team, it's for our customers, and it's for our communities, and it's threaded through everything that we do. And along with that, we have a customer-driven mindset. And so we wanted to partner with customers and ensure that business is conducted in the safest way possible, while also helping customers to drive productivity. So, like I mentioned earlier, with a clear strategy and a strong culture, impact is driven through the right process and structure. And United Rentals was able to maintain business activities and operations throughout the entire pandemic. And we've always had strong alignment across the company to get things done. But the speed with which we needed to respond to COVID forced us to examine and to refine our processes. So the first challenge, and one of the largest, was to ensure that the health and safety of our team and of our customers was kept at the highest level. So specifically, we have a joint task force, and we call it the EOC, and it coordinates our approach and drives quick action. So it's a cross-functional team of executive leadership, safety, human resources, and security representatives. And they deploy a full safety plan, which has included measures that we're going to talk about in a minute. But it has proven to be incredibly effective, and it's allowed us to reinforce things that work and also to pivot where necessary. So what did we actually do? So let's get into some details here. So we're proud of the foundational safety practices that we already had in place, for sure. It's been a major part of our company. But we also saw an opportunity to add a few more plays to our safety playbook. And I'm going to walk you through that playbook today. So in early March, we prioritized the development of guidelines to ensure safe, continuous operations for our internal teams and our customers. And it was important to start with our internal team. they needed to feel safe. So communication was key, and the flexibility to update in a fast-changing environment was really critical. So we became much more nimble, and those communication channels became more streamlined. And we adapted quickly. We expanded on what is already ingrained in our culture, that sense of urgency to move things forward. We broke the playbook down into two categories. The first one is contactless and worksite protocols, and the second one is in-branch protocols. The team was agile, and they were committed as we rolled out the new procedures, and COVID-19 drastically altered so many parts of how we operate and do business, of course, but it did not vary our strong belief in fostering a community that helps and also serves its members. And we certainly learned several things along the way, and I want to share them with you today. And we're going to start with worksite protocols, starting with play number one, which is drive-up service and designated drop zones. So it was important that we provided a contactless option. So we introduced the drive-up experience, and having put that in place, our customers are able to get the equipment that they need without stepping foot inside the branch. And each location has a designated pickup and drop-off zone, which enables a completely contactless experience. So now, while curbside and drive-up service has certainly become somewhat of a norm, we knew we needed to roll out that option really quickly and in the beginning so that our customers could keep their work sites moving. Moving on to play number two is last touch disinfecting. Not all equipment can be easily picked up. So for the customers that continue to rely on delivery, and most of them do, our drivers disinfect commonly touched surfaces one last time at the work site. So it's one more opportunity to sanitize the equipment before we deliver it and hand it over to our customers. And of note is that we purchased 17,000 gallons of disinfectant and 14,000 gallons of hand sanitizer just in the first half of the year. Now, moving on to play number three, and that is all about driver precautions. So our drivers are such an integral part of our team, and they're interacting with our customers as much as anybody else, and they're doing it on a regular basis. So we wanted to put some additional guidance in place so that our drivers and our customers could continue doing business and know that safety was always at the forefront of everything that we do. So our drivers, of course, maintain safe social distancing at the customer sites, and they also wear masks when safe distancing is not possible. Moving on to play number four, and that's digital capabilities. So it's a digital world. And we understood that our customers needed to have access to the industry's largest rental fleet from their smart devices, and we made that happen. Our customers can browse, they can schedule rentals, they can call equipment off rent right from their mobile app for a truly contactless transactional experience. And those tasks may seem small, but adding them up all together can mean significant time savings. And it didn't just end there. We didn't always know how our customers would want to do business with us in the face of COVID, but we knew we needed to give them safe and efficient options. And that brings us to the next phase of the entire playbook. So worksite protocols were an important piece to the puzzle, but we wanted to ensure that our teams at the branches also felt safe and that customers were comfortable doing business with us at our location. So the second half of the playbook covers just that, and it's our in-branch protocols, which have helped guide our teams on the best ways to serve our customers and to ensure that the equipment rental process is safe and smooth. So right on into play number 5 in the in-branch protocols. So that's pre-rental disinfecting. So as part of our standard operating process, our team performs routine safety and mechanical checks on our fleet. So we want our fleet operating at its best for our customers, obviously. So the team also disinfects the equipment before it leaves the shop to go to a customer site, and they're paying particularly close attention to controls, to latches, to seat belts, other high-touch surfaces, and they also use EPA-approved disinfectants, of which we've got loads of it, as I mentioned before. Moving on into play number 6, and that is social distancing. So that's become a common term in everyday language, and certainly it has at United Rentals, and we enforce it at our branches and also at our equipment yards. And we've got floor decals in place to make it easy to recognize, and we even also have been conducting temperature checks along with that. Moving right into play number 7, which is installing plexiglass counter barriers at each one of our branches. Because there's still plenty of business that's done at the counter, and we like knowing that our customers can come in and get what they need and they can feel safe while doing it, and our employees are also safe while that's going on. So we installed just this extra level of protection during these in-person transactions, and these plexiglass barriers were installed at each branch so that we could continue supporting our local customers. Now, moving right on into play number 8, and that's personal protective equipment. Proper PPE has always been enforced at United Rentals. It's part of our safety culture. We wouldn't have it any other way. And now we also require that face coverings are worn where social distancing cannot be achieved. And we provide the PPE to our team and to our customers who need it when they enter the branch. And in fact, we acquired 3 million pairs of gloves and 2.6 million masks in the front half of the year. We take it really, really seriously. All right, play number 9. And this is the last one that I'm going to talk to you about. So you're almost to the end. You're doing great. We're almost there. So play number 9 is communication. We have a large team, and our communications infrastructure is pretty robust. But we knew that communication and information sharing was a must, and is even heightened in response to the pandemic. So we've delivered consistent safety messages to all of our branches, and we emphasize those protocols daily. Our CEO, Matt Flannery, has sent weekly messages to employees. He's done that through email and also videos. And our safety champions have sent regular updates, safety messages to team members as well. There was a COVID-19 group that was added to our internal social media platform, Workplace, and that was to help share useful information and to address frequently asked questions. We actually surveyed our team a couple of times during 2020 to understand how they were doing and how we could support them better during these difficult times. Got thousands of responses from them. And we also delivered COVID-19 awareness training to educate our employees on symptoms and the ways in which the virus spreads, and also preventative measures that they can do to protect each other. We've leveraged those social channels and safety champions, as I mentioned. We've really streamlined the information delivery, and we've kept the team engaged. And so for our customers as well, we created a dedicated area on our website that's consolidated all of the updates related to COVID, as well as the advisories, as well as brought additional information in place. So that's the playbook. And these have been extraordinary times. And although the idea of normal has been definitely severely altered, this playbook has helped guide our conversation internally and has kept the transparency really, really crystal clear so that the team could unite and continue to help our customers get work done safely. So our focus on uniting our team has really, really been so critical. And I'm proud to say that we incurred no COVID-related layoffs or furloughs throughout the entire pandemic so far. And we've even issued shares of stock as a gift to every single employee within United Rentals. and the frontline employees at the branches received a higher amount as well. So the pandemic has given us the opportunity to prove our agility, and it's also allowed us to show our true commitment to safety. And we've tweaked the way that we've worked, but our focus on commitments to our customers has not changed at all. And so I hope some of these plays can help ignite some ideas for you to take back to your own teams. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, to allow me to take you through this playbook. It's really been a pleasure. And it's fantastic to be in front of you. Now, this is the time in which you should be clapping. Wherever you are in the world, go ahead. You can just clap, and we're going to assume that you're doing that. But those are my comments. And Lindsay, I certainly would look forward to open it up for any Q&A that might be out there.
Thank you very much, Nordy. And we do have some questions. One came in and it said, will the pandemic have an impact on site security and access to sites? And will that make it more difficult for rental salespeople?
So I've been a rental salesperson myself. And when I was a rental salesperson, you didn't actually have to, there wasn't really much security for construction sites. You could just walk right on. There already has been increased security and controls put in place at job sites, and those only ramped up even further because of COVID. I expect those will stay in place. And in Europe, I was in Europe for over a decade. Those have been in place longer, but in the U.S. you're seeing it more and more, and in Canada, and you'll see that continue forward. I feel. I don't think those will really drop off that much as we go ahead. So that's how I would answer that question.
And we have another one. Has the pandemic accelerated United's digital strategy? Are many customers interacting with you in different ways?
Very good question. We have, and our CEO, Matt Flannery, has put a real focus on digital, and it was already in place when our chairman, Mike Nealon, was CEO as well, and Matt's only doubling down even further. So there's been a focus on digital within United Rentals for quite some time. You're seeing some of these digital offerings being rolled out, and maybe rolled out even a little quicker, but we've got a really defined digital strategy. There's a lot of exciting things that will be coming out in the future, and I only wish I'd be able to share some of those with you now, but Lindsay, you're going to have me back to talk about those.
We definitely can do that, Nordy. We have just one more real quick. Can you talk just briefly about the contactless equipment rental? What type of customer is utilizing this service, and do you see it expanding beyond the pandemic?
Right. So a lot of walk-in customers who are picking up light equipment. We've just got, hundreds of thousands of small equipment, light equipment, and equipment that's being picked up. And customers they continue to drive by to do so, and they're showing up with their pickup trucks or their trailers and whatnot. But we wanted a real contactless way that we could service them. So no one has to touch a thing. It's digital, and it's show up, and we're going to put it where you need it in your vehicle or on your trailer, and you're out the door. And so it's contractors who are coming by and grabbing that equipment. But we expect that will only continue because it's made things even more efficient. And our customers like it as well because they're in and out that much faster. So that is something that'll definitely stay with us longer term. So there you go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We do have a few more questions that came in, but we want to get over to Peter Douglas. Nordy, thank you. I'll ask these people to maybe shuffle those questions over to the speakers panel. We'll also maybe have time toward the end of the conference to address these. So thanks again, Nordy. We appreciate your time. Okay, you've heard me say IPAF a few times now this morning, and joining us from the Federation is the CEO and Managing Director, Peter Douglas. Prior to joining IPAF, Peter had been with Nationwide Platforms for 26 years, most recently serving as Operations Director. Today, Peter is going to discuss priorities for the association in training, safety, policy, and research. Please stand by while we pull Peter's slides up.
Good afternoon, everybody from the United Kingdom. Thank you for that introduction, Lindsay. I just want to echo what Lindsay said at the start of the conference. It's really disappointing that we can't have a physical event today. I was really looking forward to coming over to Chicago and meeting up with people. A lot of the benefit from such events comes between the presentations and after the presentations in the bar. But massive thank you to ALH and KHL for ensuring we can have some event, and I look forward to the times where we can have a physical event again. So what I want to speak about today, I'm going to cover off a little bit about IPAF for the first 5 minutes. What is IPAF? I think there's a misconception out there about what IPAF does and why it does it. Hopefully I'll dispel some of the myths and let you know exactly what we do and why we do it. I then want to give you an overview of our activity during 2020. Not all as planned, and going back to some of the things Naughty has discussed, the things that we've reacted to on behalf of our members to ensure that business kept trading. But we'll give you an overview of what we've been up to during the year. A particular focus on the North American market, things we are doing, things we have done, and things we intend to do. Although from Lindsay's opening, I hear that there are people watching this from around the world, which is fantastic. And finally, just a few things about a few exciting projects to tell you about that IPAF has got planned for 2021. So without further ado, let's get into it. IPAF is a not-for-profit trade association. We're owned by our members, and it was established in 1983 in the United Kingdom. Initially, I think there were 5 rental companies, like-minded senior guys in rental companies that wanted a trade association for the industry. Today, we have over 1,430 members, representing 72 different countries around the globe. Our mission and key objective, as it was back in 1983, it's still the same today, is to promote the safe and effective use of powered access. It boils down into 2 areas. Firstly, we try and improve safety within our industry. A lot of the activities we do can fall under that category. The second thing that we try and do is be the collective voice of the industry. So if there's something that we want to do, we test it against those 2 activities. If it doesn't fall in one of those buckets, if you like, we don't do it. So how do we do the things we do? So I'm not going to go through this extensive list of most of the things we get involved with, but I just want to focus on a couple, if I may. Firstly, we collect accident and near miss data. And why do we do that? If we want to improve safety in the powered access industry, we need to understand what things go wrong. We've been collecting accident data now for the last 10 years or more. We've had an accident reporting portal on our website since 2012. So over the years, we've collected data from members across 21 different countries. We have thousands of lines of data informing us about fatalities, serious incidents, and even near misses. And that's fantastic. And we can do a lot with that. And we have done a lot with that. Is it enough? No. Is it representative of the whole industry worldwide? No. We have members in 72 countries. Members from 21 countries report. And not all members in those 21 countries report. So this is a call to arms, really, for people watching. Would really like you to get involved in this initiative and report any accident data that is known to you through our accident portal. It is totally anonymised, and we use that data to help make the industry safer and ultimately save lives. The second one I want to mention on the improving safety side is our Randy Access posters. And we started producing these a few years ago on the back of incidents, common incidents that we found through the accident reporting data. I think we've produced around 24 posters now to date, and they're translated into all of our key languages and available as free downloads on our website. I was given this statistic, which surprised me actually positively in preparation for this presentation. But since 2018, we've had over 31,000 downloads of those posters. They're key safety messages, simple messages to the operators of the equipment, simple do nots or be aware of that our members want and are certainly making full use of. Moving over to the collective voice of the industry. Yeah, sure, we lobby governments, legislators and industry stakeholders. We contribute and sit on standards committees on ANSI, ISO, BSI and EN. But I want to focus on the bottom two on that side of the slide, if I may. We represent our members' interests in several stakeholder sectors. I want to give you a live example of that. We're currently working with the media sector. And the media sector use a lot of mutes for two things predominantly. Either putting a cameraman in that mute to film live events, concerts, videos from the air, or to hang lights from, to do lighting work, on location work for night shoots or areas where they need a bit more lighting. There's been a few incidents in that sector, and the sector came to us and asked us to help them produce best practice guidance. So we're currently working with rental companies who provide machines to that sector and the sector itself to produce some best practice guidance. We've also done that historically with the telecom sector as well, when working near microwave dishes and RF antennas. And the bottom thing there, the bottom point there, we drive industry standards through our committees. IPAF is a relatively small team. A lot of the work is done by our members, by volunteer members getting involved in committees. A couple of those committees I will mention, and the Manufacturers Technical Committee. A lot of the worldwide manufacturers get involved and send representatives to the Manufacturers Technical Committee. They put aside any competitive differences and work as an industry on common aims and standards. One example of that this year that culminates in over 10 years of work is the International Standard on Standardization of Controls, ISO 21455. Over 10 years of work from our members has gone into producing now that standard document. So thank you very much to those committees that do all that hard work. Another great example is our International Training Committee. They're responsible for updating, improving all of our training programs. And again, they're a group of volunteers. They're our members doing work for the good of the whole industry. So moving on to, now you know what IPAF does, moving on to some of the things we've done during 2020. Does anybody remember Q1? I like to refer to it as the good old days when we could get on an aeroplane, when we could shake hands, when we could have physical events. But we got a lot done during the first quarter of 2020. We had some fantastic events. I'm not going to read them. You can all read them for yourselves. Just want to point out a couple of key ones. A key activity during the first quarter of this year was the publication of our worldwide safety report, something that our safety work group, accident reporting work group, has been working on for some time. We finally got it over the line in Q1 this year. And that focuses on the accident data we've been collecting for 3 years, 2016, 17 and 18, and focuses on fatalities and accidents that happen within our industry. And from that report, we produced a lot of activities and a lot of actions to try and help reduce accidents going forward. Conexpo Las Vegas was the last event, certainly I attended before this whole thing got crazy, as I know it was some of you guys. We got back from Vegas, I did personally on the 15th of March, and was working in my home office as I am now for 15 weeks after that. Looking forward to the highlight of my day was the trip to the shops to try and find toilet roll for a few weeks. I think that was a worldwide problem, not just a UK problem. our revenue, when lockdown happened, and it didn't happen everywhere at the same time, but over a 2-week period, IPAF's revenue fell by 90% in a 2-week period. We get our revenue from 3 sources: membership, training, and events. When lockdown happened, obviously there's no events. When lockdown happened, there's no face-to-face training happened. So our revenue fell quite steeply. And going back to our not-for-profit, we're a not-for-profit business. So all of our revenue we spend pretty much. So that was pretty significant. And I'm not going to go through all the things we did to ensure the survival of the Federation, but for the first few weeks, it was tough. We did a lot of stuff internally. And really focused on surviving probably for the first 2 or 3 weeks until we'd probably exhausted every avenue of saving costs. I just want to say a special thank you to my team who made a lot of personal sacrifices during that period. But for members, let's focus on what we did for members. We really pushed e-learning during that period, as it was the only source of revenue to some of our training centres as face-to-face training had stopped. We had to hold virtual meetings for the first time, meetings that we'd never done virtually before. We were used to having board meetings virtually, with a relatively small number of people, 9 or 10, but we'd never done a council meeting before, an international council meeting virtually, where there's about 30 attendees. And we did our annual general meeting virtually as well, where there was 55 attendees this year. So, we were forced to do things a little bit differently. And hey, the technology held up and they worked. So something to think about for the future. From mid-May onwards, we really focused on members' needs. Certainly in Europe, the lockdown restrictions were easing and training centres and our rental companies were getting back to work. So we had to be there to support them. We issued guidance on operating nukes with COVID restrictions. We produced guidance on reopening training centres. An important factor was we built facial recognition into our operator e-learning theory course. So we'd really pushed e-learning during that first period, and our e-learning, we'd had it for some years. It's a fantastic course. It wasn't massively well taken up on prior to lockdown. We were averaging around 70 candidates per week. Worldwide, we're taking our e-learning theory. During lockdown, that increased significantly, probably 2 or 3 times. To over 200 a week. But once the training centres started reopening, it absolutely exploded. And that's for 2 reasons. Firstly, candidates and operators themselves were making the decision. I don't really want to go and sit in a classroom and risk infection. There's an easier way to do it. I can sit in my own home, in my own office, and do the theory part of the course online. And I can just go to the training centre and do a practical evaluation, probably outside where it's easier to socially distance. The other reason why it exploded is some of our training centres didn't give the candidates that choice. They said, no, if you want, we'll train you, no problem. There's the e-learning, do that, and then come and do the practical. And our training centres did that because they didn't want to risk their own people, and they thought they could handle and socially distance doing the training in their yards or in their workshops, but they didn't want to bring outsiders into their depots. Another new thing that we learned was webinars. We'd never done webinars internationally. We'd done a few webinars. I think we've now held 4. One on the safe operation of MOOCs, one on the future of safe learning. We launched our new accident reporting portal with one on the subject of reducing accidents through intelligence. And just this week, actually, we've issued our latest webinar on the 2020 rental market reports. And any business leaders that are watching this conference, please go to our website and view that. It's probably worth your while. Another landmark thing that we've done, and only in the last few weeks, we've certified use of the virtual reality simulator in our advanced operator PAL Plus course. That's taken over 18 months of trials, which has been hampered by the pandemic, but we finally got there. Our international council authorised the use of the virtual reality simulator for our advanced operator course. So that's quite a landmark, and I'm sure your next speaker will discuss more on that. And obviously, during October, we're trying to budget for 2021, which is, very difficult, but planning for the next, for the final quarter of the year and some of our projects in 2021. So just focus specifically on North America. We've got a very active North American Regional Council made up of 17 members that are made up of manufacturers, rental companies and users. Their key focus is raising the awareness of the key factors for the industry and supporting membership throughout North America. We hold an annual Innovate workshop that focuses on the key issues within the industry. Unfortunately, it's been cancelled this year, but usually it's an exciting interactive event that invites attendees to collaborate on industry-specific topics, such as preventing mute tip-overs, preventing electrocutions, and using innovation to improve our industry. And then, of course, there's the new ANSI standards. Our booth at Connexpo was really focused on the new ANSI standards. We developed the Mutes for Supervisor course in conjunction with the new standards. We also made improvements to our operator e-learning course on the back of those standards. And we also have some guidance documents in production, one on the safe use plan and one on safe work procedures, looking at risk assessments, method statements, incorporating all of the responsibilities, ensuring that we can apply risk assessments and develop suitable method statements, and asking the question, what is the workplace procedure to ensure risks are eliminated? As an example, if you need to stay 10 foot away from power lines, how do you do that? Do you use cones, barricades, ground person, proximity sensors, etc.? On the back of the success of our international webinars, we're going to launch a series of 6 educational webinars in 2021 specific to North America. We haven't finalised all the topics yet, but they will certainly include a step-by-step guide to the new ANSI standards and our accident reporting initiative. From an IPAF training perspective in North America, we continue to push IPAF certified training and our PAL card scheme. Both of those courses ensure operators are receiving good, high-quality training, standardised training that is verified by IPAF's internal auditing procedures. And finally, in the States each year, and we've managed to do it this year, thank you, Tony Grote, that we produce IPAF's Elevating Safety magazine. That's distributed with Equipment Today magazine to over 80,000 contacts in North America, and content from it is published in For Construction Pro newsletters and distributed to over 85,000 subscribers. So finally, plans for 2021. Naughty talked a lot about digitisation. I am of the opinion that I certainly think that the current situation has accelerated the opportunity for some of this stuff. So we're producing an operator app. And we're not that excited about that. We're just moving with the times, I suppose, but it will host a digital PAL card, a digital operator safety guide, and a digital logbook. That in itself will improve sustainability. The amount of postage, packaging, of booklets, of guides, of certificates, of plastic cards will be reduced phenomenally. But the most exciting thing from IPAF's perspective and from our team's perspective, for the first time ever, we will have a direct link to communicate with the users of the equipment to push important safety messages to the operators, the ones who make the mistakes. We're also continuing that digitisation strategy by introducing paperless tests, so the whole IPAF training programme will be paperless. I've mentioned our accident reporting initiative already, but something that comes out of the accidents quite often is poor mute selection. We chose the wrong machine to do the job in the first place. So our members have asked us to produce a site survey or mute selection course, and that will be available on e-learning and instructor-led in the first half of next year. And we're certainly planning a mixture, hopefully, of physical and virtual events and meetings, learning from this year's efficient meetings that we've held virtually, but also, I think it's really healthy to get together. I think, as I said earlier, some of the real business gets done in the bar and between such presentations as I'm doing now. But we will recognise, the successful webinars that we've had. We will recognise some meetings can and should be maybe done virtually. The virtual reality simulator trials continue. We've started the trials on the renewal course. They definitely won't take as long as 18 months, but they are now underway. And finally, we want to launch a project on environmental sustainability. We want to really champion that for the powered access industry, an area that I think needs some focus. A lot of our manufacturer members and rental company members are doing some fantastic stuff in this area. We want to signpost and highlight best practice. We haven't fully scoped the project yet, but we're quite excited, and we think that as an industry, we can champion that on behalf of the industry. And finally, before I hand back to Lindsay, I just want to mention quite a landmark event that's going to be happening. We don't know exactly when. We're on the countdown now, but it will be sometime around mid-November. IPAF will be issuing its 2 millionth PAL card. That's quite a historic moment for us. We started our training program in 1993. It took 21 years to get to 1 million. It's only taken 7 years to get to 2 million. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that. This is, I think, the first people we've mentioned it to. So it's a scoop for you guys. We'll be doing some celebrations around that. And to celebrate, if this event had been virtual, I would have bought you all a drink in the bar this evening. Unfortunately, it's not. So you'll maybe have to wait till 3 million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, and congratulations on hitting that number. That's fantastic. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions, and I've got some from attendees. How has Accident Statistics Initiative been taken up in North America, and do you have a good level of engagement, or are you hoping for more?
We're definitely hoping for more, Lindsay. The only area in the world where it's mandated, our members in the UK mandated it as a condition of being an IPAF member, an IPAF rental company member in the UK. It's mandatory that you report your accidents and incidents. So some US companies do report accidents, but it's on a pure voluntary basis. I can assure you that it's, I think when we initially started talking about this, I think the North Americans, certainly with the litigation issues in the States and North America, were very nervous. But I can assure you it's totally anonymised, the data that we use, and we're just trying to reduce accidents going forward with it. So we need more. We do get some from our members in the States, but we would like a lot more, certainly.
I've got one more. Is there a risk that investment in safety and training suffers as companies face financial challenges?
Yeah, there's always a risk of that. One of the first things potentially to get cut for probably some companies is discretionary training. I think we're quite fortunate that training on mooch definitely isn't discretionary in a lot of our member countries, and shouldn't be discretionary anywhere in the world. But it is a risk. We saw a massive drop off. There was no training going on pretty much for 6-8 weeks, certainly during March and April. We're back up to about 85% of where we were pre-COVID. So we're not there yet. We're not out of the woods. It's not back to normal. I don't know if it ever will get back to where it was in the short term, but we're doing okay and continuing to push our safety messages. But it is a small risk, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Peter. We really appreciate it. We have time for a 5-minute break, folks. So let's just take 5 minutes. You can visit the sponsors section, chat with people, network, and we'll reconvene at 10:55 Central Time. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I'd now like to welcome Jim Colvin, President and CEO of VR/AR simulator technology company Sirius Labs. Jim has been with Sirius Labs for 8 years now, and today he's going to share his views on how mute training has changed during COVID-19. Take it away, Jim.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for having me. And yes, I am going to be talking about training in a COVID world. Just got to advance my slides here. In March of this year, something disastrous happened all around the world, where a national declaration of a national emergency concerning coronavirus outbreak. And, immediately the world started to shut down, particularly in March and April, and global guidelines and mandates were put in place. And of course, for training, traditional training centers around the world offering classroom and in-person practical assessments were closing or closed immediately. Now, in almost a contradiction to that, in April and May of 2020, many countries around the world defined critical infrastructure workforce, including construction in particular, as essential services. So global training providers immediately had to start to innovate to respond to the renewed demand in training in the midst of the pandemic itself. And particularly on the theoretical side, alternative delivery modalities such as virtual classrooms and e-learning solutions became the primary source for that type of training. So I'm going to dip into some of the options that were selected by some of the major training players, as well as some of the things that we learned, both on the theoretical and the practical side. So one option that was chosen was the virtual classroom. And this is your WebEx, your Zoom call. And this became quite popular, and the adoption of that for all kinds of reasons has become very popular. And the advantage certainly is that the students don't have to congregate. So clearly in a COVID world, that's not what you want to do. But it's still enabled for that real-time interaction with the instructor with Q&A, similar to a classroom environment. It's effective for time management because you're being paced by the instructor. And with the new technology and improved visualization, it was actually much better than it was even a year ago. And I think a lot of these platforms have really improved the fidelity of the experience. Disadvantages, of course, is like all training and instruction, it's subjective depending on the style of the instructor. So, if the guy was lousy in person, he's probably going to be lousy on the web. Secondly, is that the students must attend at a scheduled time, so it doesn't offer the flexibility there. You might be home in your pajamas, but you have to be on schedule at the time that the instructor dictates. The unlimited class sizes, which while good because you can reach more people, you tend to lose that smaller group dynamic for interaction. And then just on a pure technical point, and we were struggling with some this morning ourselves, live streaming does require uninterrupted high-speed internet. And so if your experience is interrupted because your Wi-Fi might be interrupted or slow at a period of time, and I live in a house with daughters and they'll jam that up pretty fast, that can interrupt the experience too. And then, often in a classroom experience in a smaller group, an instructor can actually visually see if somebody might be having a challenge. And that's a little different when you have a two-dimensional screen experience, especially if there's a lot of people involved. Another modality that has been around a while now, but absolutely was accelerated, was self-paced e-learning. Now, it's got its advantages too, because it's always objective, so it doesn't depend on the subjectivity of the instructor. It can be taken at a student's convenience rather than at a scheduled time, which is really helpful. It's knowledge checks like good e-learning, and I'm going to say this, not all e-learning is created equal. We've all had to sit through really lousy PowerPoint on the internet, but I would certainly give a shout out to Peter Douglas and IPAF's e-learning product, and United Rentals and Nordy's e-learning product, not just because Sirius Labs built it, but I still find that some of the most engaging e-learning available in the world, because it has knowledge checks and interaction, that's how people like to learn, not just passive instruction. And because it can connect into learning management systems and electronic record stores, you immediately get that back into a system where you can analyze the data to see where the product can be improved and how people did on it. Now, it does have its disadvantages too. It doesn't have the class dynamic with an instructor. A lot of people have preferred that. So it doesn't have the ability to ask questions in real time when confronted with challenges. And of course, poor quality e-learning content creates challenges to engagement and focus, as I was pointing out in the advantages. So, again, like anything, it really is, there is no standard quality of e-learning products. It really does depend on the effort that's gone into generating it and the tools that have been used to really create that engagement. Now, on the practical side, obviously, that typically there would be a group instruction on practical evaluation, and everybody would kind of take their turn on the machine in the parking lot. But that obviously wasn't possible. So one of the options that several training entities did was to create up a scheduling system so that it would be one instructor, one person scheduled throughout the day. So there was limited human contact, and obviously the machine could be cleaned between uses. And, the evaluation could occur at a training center or at a job site, depending on convenience. So quite often we saw, trainers and certified evaluators were actually going to the job site. But of course, the disadvantages are it does require access to a certified evaluator, like it always does. And, it's kind of inefficient and not cost effective if the day is not fully booked or the appointments are staggered. And I know that was a major challenge of a lot of the major rental companies and training centers is that, trying to get the certified evaluators booked, was difficult because trying to make it continuous rather than staggered, early in the day, then somebody shows up late in the day. So, and of course, many of the rental yards were closed and are still closed to visitors and vendors, which means that you couldn't have anybody on site anyway. And then to take it on site to the job site, that really depended on, availability of space and equipment there on that particular job site. The traditional practical evaluation side had its challenges too. Now, another alternative is the virtual reality simulator. Now, the advantages of the simulator is it's a single use, so no unnecessary human contact. It can be cleaned after each use and sterilized. It's always objective and consistent, so it's not up to the subjectivity of the evaluator. It does not require a master trainer to operate. It's just pretty simple on-off. And it automatically integrates with learning management systems and other learning record stores. It is portable and takes up limited space. So if it wanted to be thrown in the back of a training trailer and taken to site, it didn't occupy equipment. It is not dependent on weather, not dependent on giant space and access to equipment. And of course, it's always on. It's not, it doesn't take breaks. It doesn't go to the bathroom. It doesn't book off. It doesn't complain to the union if it doesn't get its automatic breaks. Well, ours does because we're Canadian. But, disadvantages is that it's not as widely recognized for evaluation of new operators. And I'm going to give a shout out to our friends at IPAF that the recent announcement that just dropped that that simulators have now been recognized to deliver assessments for the PAL Plus Advanced training. So we're extremely excited about that. And I thank our team out there for all the hard work over with the IPAF folks to get that done over the last 18 months. But back here in North America, we have our simulators actually have been recognized by the Building Trades of Alberta and the Alberta Construction Training Institute. They representing 60,000 union workers, and our simulators now actually recognized for first-time operators as being assessed on a simulator. And Energy Safety Canada, same thing. They represent about 200,000 energy workers in Canada, and across their about 190 different training centers across Canada. And they now also recognize the simulator to deliver training and assessment for MOOP operators. So there is more, the groundswell of adoption is increasing literally weekly. So keep an eye on that. Now, still, it does require a facilitator to set up and clean between uses, so it's not plug and play completely. And of course, it requires power and shelter. It is technology, notwithstanding how robust it is. And, you know, notwithstanding us having a variety of different pricing models now so that even the smallest training center can afford it, you know, if you're trying to buy one outright, that's an expensive endeavor. We don't disagree, even though we're about a tenth of the cost of traditional training simulators that we've seen. So, you know, even alternative training methods like simulators have their pros and cons. So, you know, when we sit back and we ask, you know, what have we learned from all this? Well, we've learned a couple different things. You know, in general, you know, grandma knows how to use Zoom. And what's kind of cool about that is, you know, just like her iPhone, you know, people are adopting this new technology and we're realizing efficiencies. And if you actually speak to companies that have sales organizations, like they're not going back. They saved a lot of money by not sending people out and having to have meetings. I've talked to my former lawyer colleagues from my old firms, and they're really evaluating whether or not they need to have giant real estate commitment and office towers downtown. And they're much more efficient and effective to be able to work at a distance. People learning using e-learning and other types of forms of interactive modalities online, that's exploded. I know that iPass has exploded. I know United Rentals at least doubled their volumes with their United Academy e-learning product. So, you know, again, the genie's out of the bottle there. You know, that we're really going to be adopting these new paradigms because we all have certain things in common. You know, this is the statistics in, you know, incidents of people in lost incident categories right out of iPass new report. We all have the intent of trying to eliminate the impact of a poor operator. And we also understand the value of a good operator. We know that you know, a safe operator brings skills and efficiency and safety to the job site, reduces downtime. So we all have those common goals. But ultimately, you know, the genie is out of that bottle. We're not going to go back. We've adopted this technology. And I like to use this slide sometimes because, you know, the upper slide is spot the automobile in the moray of a mass of horses and buggies. And, you know, and this is the turn of the Industrial Revolution, you know, spot the horse 13 years later, there isn't any. So this is accelerating as a result of this pandemic even quicker than most people anticipated. And remember, too, we've got a whole change of the generation of the workforce right now. We're now, you know, there's 10,000 workers leaving the jobs pre-COVID in North America alone, and they're being replaced by a generational workforce that learns differently. They understand these modalities. They're not afraid of them. They recognize them. They want to use them, and they see organizations that adopt them as that they care about how they learn and their safety and competency. So to us, you know, obviously a pandemic is, you don't want to wish that upon anything, but if we have to find a silver lining, this has accelerated the adoption of new technologies. It's enabling underrepresented people in our industry to participate, and it's not going away. So thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions that I can answer now, or unless you want me to answer them later?
Thank you very much, Jim. We do have a couple questions, so if you can hang tight and answer them, please. You were just working with IPAF and accredited with the VR training. What's next? What module does that consist of? And give us a little sneak peek into maybe what we can expect next.
Well, as you see behind me, Lindsay, I fill my house with simulators, so I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm constantly testing. My Oompa Loompas are always on the file. We're constantly innovating, but we've got some exciting things. Certainly, with the MOOP simulator itself, we've added our airplane module. So working around curved surfaces like a fuselage of an airplane is a very complex maneuver. And therefore, we've created a specific module for MROs or airplane engineers to be able to get close to the machine without touching it, because everybody knows how expensive that can be when you touch the fuselage of an airplane. So that's a fairly new module, which is really exciting. It's being tested by some of the major international airlines. We're also, with this major infrastructure bills have been announced both in Europe and North America. And those infrastructure bills contain a lot of the replacement of the traditional power grid. I know there's the national grid in the UK, and here in North America, it's being completely rebuilt. We're building a bucket truck module right on the chassis of this very same MOOP simulator so that you can start to operate near power lines, and the module will be very specific for working in substations and then power transmission lines. And we're working on forklifts. We have lots of other telehandlers, so lots of other products coming down the pipe that I can't get too deep into right now. But just to say that we're quite excited with a lot of the things that we have in the hopper.
And just one more for you, Jim. Do you see any sort of adaptation differences for various countries? For instance, does the UK have more of an acceptance than the US, or vice versa?
That's interesting. I guess I would kind of conflate it with the attention to safety and where safety ranks and competency ranks in relation to getting a guy on a job site. And unfortunately, it's sad to say sometimes when my own country struggles with that, whereas the level of what's acceptable through occupational health and safety is quite low. And then yet what the responsibility of the employer is as far as ensuring competency and capability for people operating on their site is quite high. So there's definitely a gap there. And I think the gap is closing. I would say that the UK has always led. IPAF is being an international organization, but its incubation is in the UK. I've always been enormously impressed at how, their attention to safety. Europe as well, the US and Canada are coming along. In other international countries, we found Singapore, very high standards, liability to directors if, events happen on site. Australasia, the Antipodeans, very high standards. So, what I hope technology does, Lindsay, is it's a rising tide that floats all boats. That by giving access and democratizing learning and training and competency through these type of technologies, we're going to enable more people to have access to them, and we're going to raise that standard everywhere. So it won't be so jurisdictionally or geographically. It'll just be a standard that we set as a globe. And as IPAF expands across the globe at the pace they are with the leadership they have, I'm very confident that they're going to be able to bring this to jurisdictions that otherwise wouldn't have seen it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Jim. We really appreciate it. And now we're going to actually move into a look at equipment, and specifically the electrification of equipment. Shashank Bhatia is JLG's Senior Director of Engineering for Aerial Work Platforms and Product Development, and he specifically focuses on scissors, verticals, and low-level access products. Unfortunately, he had to pre-record his presentation today, but we're going to pull that right up momentarily, so stay tuned.
Hello everyone, my name is Shashank Bhatia and I work for JLG Industries as a Senior Director for Product Development. And this talk is on the trends in electrification in our industry. The agenda starts with the why a need for electrification and then hits on what we have done so far and how we plan to make further inroads in electrification. It then touches on who electrification benefits in our ecosystem, and we'll wrap up with how the worksite of the future may look like. So let's talk about why is there a need for electrification. At the macro level, there are many trends that drive market needs. But these 5 megatrends we believe are the most significant for the future of our industry. And the one that impacts electrification the most is urban world. So let's talk a little bit more about it. The megatrend of urbanization is one of the fastest growing trends in today's world. Today, 50% of the population stays in urban cities, and 1.5 million people are being added every month. By 2050, 66% of the population will be in urban cities. Urbanization will lead to megacities, It will lead to green cities that will use renewable resources, which will lower carbon footprint. Green cities will also have strict standards in lowering the health hazards in the form of air pollution and noise pollution. And regulations will drive a lot of these requirements. Urbanization will also lead to smart cities that will use the tools from the fourth industrial revolution, where connectivity is going to be of paramount importance. Everything will need to be connected. This need for electrification is also being driven by adoption in construction equipment industry, where these technologies are becoming more mature and affordable, aided by their development and use in the on-road segment. The industry is also recognizing the efficiency improvements by going to electrification, which I'll cover more in the subsequent slides. This matrix that I'm going to show you maps out the applications, the requirements, and the adoption of electrification. The application segments range from data centers, food processing units, clean rooms, hotels, etc. And the requirements across range from zero emissions, no fluids, clean, no noise, efficiency improvements, etc. The colors represent how strong is the need to solve these benefits in those segments. Basically saying that the data center has a strong need for zero emissions. Another element that we have listed is the adoption of electrification in that segment. We believe clean rooms, hotels, food processing units will completely adopt electrification, whereas other segments may partially adopt it. Overall, this lays out the need and the earliest market adopters for electrification. So now let's talk about what has already been done so far in our field of electrification. Today we have a range of alternate technologies, from hybrid machines to electric machines in our product portfolio. But these technologies only electrify the powertrain. The rest of the product still has hydraulic cylinders, valves, which results in leaks, noise, and lower efficiency. In the future, we believe that not only the powertrain needs to be electric, but every functional system of the machine needs to be electrified, along with the distributed power architecture. This will yield all the benefits that we have spoken about, from zero emissions to higher efficiency. So now let's talk about the how. What technologies have we developed to fill the market needs for electrification? Now let's look at some of the technologies used to develop all electric machines. In this slide, we'll focus on the electric powertrain and the lift actuation system. So the drive system in traditional machines is either a hydraulic motor or a DC brushed electric motor. But now we have leapt forward and we have used permanent magnet AC technology drives, and these are driven by independent motor controllers. This motor increases efficiency by 30% and enables drive speeds of 4 miles an hour, which is especially useful in large warehouse applications. Enhanced traction control enables climbing grades of 25% or more, which is useful while loading and unloading machines on a rollback unit. The system, coupled with steer actuators and sensors, enables high precision movement, thereby reducing tire wear and also damage to sensitive floors. Now let's touch upon the lift actuation system. The lift mechanism goes from a system of hydraulic cylinders and holding valves to an electromechanical actuator. This is in the form of a ball screw, which is driven by a gearbox coupled to an electric motor. As the screw turns, a set of ball bearings translate in an enclosed ball nut mounted around the screw, thereby causing the actuator to extend and retract. Now, during the design of this system, there were some technical challenges that needed to be solved, and these were around systems that require hydraulic pressure. One of them being the load sense system, which is used to ensure that the machine never gets overloaded. The solution to all these systems were integrated in the design of the electric actuator. The lift actuator enables superior load carrying capability, which is a huge productivity benefit. This system also has no contamination concerns since there is no oil, which is the biggest issue in hydraulics. This machine regenerates energy on the way down as the motor turns into a generator, thereby increasing battery life by more than 30%. This system has a ton of safety redundancies in the form of speed, torque, current, temperature sensors that ensure safe operation of the machine at height. The biggest market challenge for this are the high system costs, and these are mitigated by optimal designs and adoption of this technology in the marketplace. Next, we're going to talk about battery and charging technologies. Traditionally, our current machines are equipped with flooded lead acid batteries or internal combustion engines as the power source. But the maintenance costs for these systems are a huge burden to the customer. Our new all-electric machines have highly efficient systems, and the power required to run these machines is cut by more than 40%. And this has opened the door for us to start looking at lithium-ion technology. We looked at various chemistries and chose lithium iron phosphate, LFP, as the chemistry of choice. This is extremely safe and is not susceptible to thermal runaway. It has a consistent performance in terms of capacity at different C rates and can be used in temperatures varying from 0C to 40C. The battery system significantly lowers total cost of ownership as it has long life and lower maintenance costs. This is a huge benefit for the customer since the current machines have high battery replacement costs, whereas these ones, the battery lasts the life of the machine. On the safety side, it's got a fully independent battery management system which monitors cell temperature, cell voltages, and ensures an optimal state of health of the system. It also provides data in terms of state of charge and usable life left in terms of kilowatt hours or number of cycles. The disadvantages are the high system costs, but these can be mitigated by leveraging the longer life cycle of the battery, thereby giving longer warranty to the customer. Now on the charging technology, these highly efficient machines have lowered the power usage, thereby reducing the charge time by more than 60%. These machines also enable opportunity charging or quick charging. This refers to providing usable power to the machine in a reasonable short amount of time, in minutes, especially when the batteries are dead. This is useful in troubleshooting dead machines on a job site and also sending machines back to the service center quickly. We are also looking at level 2 charging, which will reduce charging times even more to a matter of minutes. But the biggest challenge in that is the different global charging standards and also the lack of charging infrastructure for the industrial machines for high power charging. This section in the technology development for the electric machines talks about the heart of the machine, which is the control system and connectivity. These machines use a distributed architecture where individual power controllers are controlling each system, and these individual power controllers are daisy chained to the master controller on the CAN communication side. This enables precise control of the system without any latency and minimizes voltage drops across the circuits. The control system also provides seamless serviceability by monitoring safe working limits of all systems and displays warning signals when the conditions are not met. It also enables automatic troubleshooting of basic faults and also includes intuitive ways of troubleshooting at the fingertips of the user. The control system is also integrated with hardware that enables near communication with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and far communication with cellular network. This enables collecting data, monitoring machine failures, measuring and analyzing performance of various functions like battery systems, and based on all this, being able to provide prognostics on systems, thereby improving the life cycle of the product. This combination of control system coupled with connectivity devices is also able to provide over-the-air software updates, thereby lowering total cost of ownership since service techs don't need to travel to the physical site to fix the machine. One of the challenges of this system would be the training of service personnel in the field of power electronics and high voltages, which are not typically used in our current machines. So we spoke about how the technology was developed. Now let's look at who this benefits. So from a study conducted by McKinsey on total cost of ownership, they found that the total cost of ownership for battery electric vehicles is 21% lower than the internal combustion engines. And this can be further lowered in the future when the battery and charging infrastructure costs keep coming down. Building on that, we looked at the total cost of ownership in our industry. But before that, let's look at our ecosystem. It starts with the architect designing the construction site and specifying the equipment to be used. It then moves to the OEM, which in this case is JLG, that is designing the equipment. This is then sold to the rental partner, who in turn rents it to the general contractor and or the building owner. And then it's finally used by the operator. In our new electric machines, each and every player of the ecosystem has benefits to use this machine. The rental channel partner has benefits because it lowers their total cost of ownership with less maintenance cost. The general contractor has benefits of productivity with faster charge times. The operator has benefits from cleaner, quieter, self-diagnostic machines. And the OEM, which is JLG, has benefits from connected machines. We can collect and analyze data, develop usage insights, which will help us in better designing future products. So let's do a quick analysis on total cost of ownership of our product. On the left is our current traditional hydraulic machines, and on the right is our all-electric machines. And as you can see, the operating costs for the customers are lower for the all-electric machines on the right. In terms of rental income, the all-electric machine can definitely bring in more rental income due to higher productivity in the form of faster charge times, and that these machines can be used longer during the day along with all other benefits. In terms of resale value, the all-electric machine has higher resale value due to its superior features and its ability to track usable life remaining, which will give the machine a better valuation than the current machine. So the overall total cost of ownership is lower by 30 to 40% for the all-electric machine, and this benefits everyone in the ecosystem. So to wrap it up, I talked about the why for electrification, focusing on market needs, to the how, which showed the technology being developed, to the who, which showed the benefits for electrification in our ecosystem. Now I'll show you a small version of what we think is the future of the work sites where all these technologies merge. So we always need to be asking ourselves, what can we do better? What are we learning from other industries? And what can we do to move our industry forward? As leaders, it is our responsibility to continually move forward and drive change while understanding the history that has gotten us to where we are today. By looking at the 5 megatrends that are driving our industry, the needs of the people in our ecosystem, we are able to see the direction at which our world and the construction industry is headed. The technologies like electrified autonomous machines with robotic arms, powered by solar charging infrastructure, will soon be on every worksite. Our industry leverages a heritage of innovation across and between different avenues to continually develop technologies that improve job site safety and productivity in a sustainable manner. Regardless of our role or our location, it is up to each one of us to drive change. In the end, it's always tough to predict what the future would be. But rest assured that we are well on our way in this journey of electrification. And I hope I've inspired you all to think about the endless possibilities for this amazing technology that is going to impact our industry in a positive way in the future. Thank you all for listening to me. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Shashank. That was fantastic. We've got quite a lot of questions that have come in from our viewers. So thank you for being able to join us to answer those. First one that came in was, would it be possible to fit different size chargers to allow for different shift operations?
Different size chargers would depend on what kind of capabilities there on these machines. So we are today designing machines with level 1 charging, which is basically charging out of our regular household outlet, and we are also looking at level 2 charging, which is 240 volts. Next step is level 3 charging, which goes to what your Teslas have today, which is basically DC fast charging. So that's our goal. Definitely this is our path, where we would go into level 1, 2, and 3 charging in the future.
And someone asked, does the AE1932 with ball screw actuator have the same lifting force and speed and IP rating of conventional machines?
Actually, it's got higher rating, higher capacity, higher IP requirements, because it's basically a screw coupled to a gearbox and a motor, and it's basically dependent on the size of the screw. That's it. So bigger the screw, and the one that you have mentioned, the AE1932, increases the lift capacity by 30% than its current traditional machine.
Great. And just one more, please. In the past, these new power technologies have been quite expensive. How long before there is an equivalence in the price between traditional and new powered machines?
Well, that is, a $1 million question. And so right now, the prices are drastically coming down for, batteries. Batteries is a big cost. But the main thing that we have to think about is it is just not the cost of batteries or things, it's the cost of the overall system. So as we completely electrify our machines, our power required to lift a certain amount of load completely comes down, so that you can use smaller packaging batteries, which would basically reduce the cost even more. So I would say in the next 5 years, these machines are going to be on the work site as a regular machine, and we would be just saying, hey, 5 years back we were talking about this, and now this is the new future. So absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you again. I appreciate your time and having the questions live today. So we're just going to break for a few minutes now, everyone. And then when we come back, we have Scott Hazelton, who's going to provide us with U.S. construction market outlooks. And then our final topic of the day, which will be a live interview with Birch Equipment Rental. So stay tuned. Thanks. Welcome back. We have just 2 more presentations to go, and our next speaker is Scott Hazelton, Director with the Global Construction Team of IHS Markit. Scott has decades of experience discussing data and market forecasts, and today he will present the latest findings regarding the rental and North American market. Thank you for coming, Scott. It's over to you.
Thanks. So I wanted to kind of cover all of the industries in a nutshell that demand access equipment. So a lot to cover in a few minutes, so I'll go a little bit quickly. First, to put in perspective, this is the most recent employment data we have. And you can see the impact of the recession as it trickles down from actually a net job gain for federal government, but industries you care about, certainly construction is down, although less now than it used to be. Wholesale trade is down somewhat more. Transportation a little bit more than that. And then you see retail, manufacturing, and finally leisure hospitality all being hit somewhat harder, with ground zero being leisure hospitality. And this is the sharpest recession in history and the shortest. So the GDP loss is entirely confined to Q2, but it was about a 40% loss in Q2, 30% loss in Q2. So the crawl back out of this is somewhat extensive. And this is, to put in perspective, this is the purchasing managers index that we maintain here at IHS Markit. And it's the world's simplest survey. Are your operations better today than they were yesterday, or worse today than they were yesterday? And so you see that gray line, the recession. Everybody craters. I'm surprised anybody answered yes to that question. In fact, the level of 35 manufacturing is surprising, and even 25 in services manufacturing. But responses now are certainly back in the expansion range, in the 55 to 60 level. But remember, are things better today than they were yesterday? So this is improvement. This does not mean we're back into recovery yet. It means we are recovering. And then looking at the top line industries that we wanted to think about today, this is the view last year, this year, in the next 2 years. And you see negatives this year and even negatives into next year. This year being far worse, but construction, mining has challenges into next year, and even manufacturing with the slower growth that we expect will be plus, but not great. In fact, growth rates aren't additive. If drilling falls by 50%, that means you went from $100 to $50. If you then grow 20, you're at $60, not 100 or not at 70. So you have to look at this as that 19 is a great number off a very, very poor base. Next year is still a very bad year for drilling. I've broken the economy into 2 manufacturing buckets, durables, non-durables. They're within those. You see some other industries I think are of interest to you. Outlook again this year, last year, next year. You see in general, a recovery next year, with the exception of primary metals. So not a great year for steel mills, but modest recovery for everybody else. The key is, with the exception of computers, those lines on the right are not as big as the lines on the left. And so looking at, for the most part, next year being another year which is tough, just with growth, but apart from computers and to some degree wood products, a tough year next year for most of manufacturing. In the durable goods space and in non-durable goods, a similar story. Here we're looking at your tobacco, probably not your biggest concern, but textiles, apparel, food products, all having a tougher year this year, except for really food products where because of our home confinement, we had a decent outcome. But for the most part, we're looking at next year being tougher than this year across the board for manufacturing, even in the non-durable space. And again, food products been an outlier where this year was okay. Next year, you could have some growth off a fairly flat level. But even this year was somewhat negative because restaurants and hotels do buy processed food. So while we had a great year at grocery stores, overall packaged food did have a small downturn. Energy market is also of critical importance to access and handling. Certainly, we all know we had an oil price shock. This pandemic, by its nature, came on very quickly. And so we had no time to run down inventories. We had a decent, if not strong, global economy and suddenly get stopped. And that means sudden oversupply of oil and gas and any other petroleum downstream product, which meant then cuts, which have been made, but they're not really sufficient in and of themselves to reduce the inventory. And so we have oil at $44 a barrel this year. We think in the second half, increasing somewhat next year, but there are concerns with that because we're going to see things like Saudi Russia putting perhaps more oil in the market, as will the U.S. So we have to have a decrease in supply and an increase in demand before we're going to get a permanent change in the picture. Now, I wanted to sort of put in perspective here the size of the downturn. We had oil price collapse in 2014-15. This is worse. This is the rig count on the left-hand side by play. On the right-hand side, it's a similar picture, except the left-hand side is a stacked bar, so it's cumulative, and the right-hand side is just the levels each play on its own right, so you can just look at where you're exposed to equipment. So again, the good news is rig counts have stabilized, but they've stabilized at 3/4 off their peak, and even more than that in the Bakken. At the price of oil, there's better supply channels to get oil to refineries from the Permian than from the Bakken. So they're all bad, but the Bakken suffers the most because of the highest cost of transportation. And I don't see a big change in this moving forward. In fact, this takes a look at what we see for oil happening globally. The orange line is demand, which has collapsed, has recovered somewhat, and we think it now plateaus for a while until we get past the worst of the pandemic impacts on tourism and business travel. That's what hence plateau until we get more aircraft back in the sky and more cars back on the road. But you see a prolonged period of demand being barely above supply, and that glut in the early part of the year was supply exceeding demand. Hence the red line, which is a surplus or deficit. We have deficit production looking forward in order to burn off that excess supply. Hence that view of this year being difficult, next year being difficult, even 2022 being a challenge for the oil market. So prices recover. That's the good news. But they recover only if we can get demand to increase and production cuts to stick. And even then, we're looking at production, looking at prices that are consistent with barely profitable production and fracking, and probably not even at all profitable for Canada's tar sands. And so this takes a look at the production we expect to see in the U.S. With no real recovery until next year. And these are year-over-year values. So you see the increase in 2021 of June, that's an increase in production over this year's June, which was down substantially. So those are increases, again, from bad levels. And overall, this is a market where you're going to have some challenges to find a lot of opportunity. And we don't play politics at IHS Markit, but one question we do get asked is what happens with the possible Biden administration. And the short answer is, there's a lot of discussion. He wants to end fracking. It's not quite what he said. What he said was he wants to end fracking on federal lands. And so this puts in perspective of just how much of our frack industry is on federal lands, either onshore or offshore. And he gets about 20%. So it certainly would move the dial, but it's not going to be a catastrophic outcome. We've got a far worse downturn now than we would have from any federal land restrictions. And I wanted us to cover construction because it's perhaps your biggest market. So it's a problem across the board in construction, but the good news is residential has increased in the U.S. Back to about where it was in 2019. And we think if housing starts, that is the new construction stays there. The bad news has been that we have high unemployment, but it's occurring mostly among renters. And so homeowners have been spared the impact we would have seen here in a 2006, 7, 8, 9 kind of scenario. The problem is the non-res side, where this year is okay-ish because we're going to finish off the work in progress, but we're not hiring a lot of new architects. So you see the problem going forward will be next year. And into 2022 even, it's about a 12 to 18 month lag. If you aren't hiring architects today, you're not doing work a year and a half out. And infrastructure is sort of that last piece that you might be thinking is good news. Absent a new bill, the problem is we have this year, but moving forward, we've got lower gas tax revenue federally and lower state and local taxes because of retail trade, rooms and meals taxes, which are going to challenge the ability to pay for infrastructure. We're going to be trying to keep employees and cut investments. So not a lot of good news here is look at the construction spend across the board by segment. Residential showing some growth, the only one showing growth really of the majors. Healthcare up barely this year, more next year. A lot of reasons behind that, not really a lot of time to go into why this should look so bad. And utilities, again, growing only because we're doing a substitution of carbon-based fuels for green energy, driving that kind of spending. The housing market is coming back, and I'm going to go straight to the picture of the view of starts in blue versus price in green. So key to the housing market forecast is the fact that prices don't collapse, incentivizes new construction, and most importantly, incentivizes new home improvement, the fastest growing piece of the market. So you see starts come back up and pretty much flatten out for the next 3 years. We don't see a lot of household formation occurring to drive better outcomes. Left-hand side here is the non-res in green, residential in green, non-res in gray, and infrastructure in dark blue or teal. And so you can see the squeezing is going to happen on the non-res sector, not just now, but moving forward. Even up 2-3 years, there's challenges remaining in this market. Now, the good news that I will, I guess, share with you is that we have too much space. Whether it be office, retail, there's too much space. It's the wrong kind of space. We now need to have greater footprints per employee, redesign common areas, redesign HVAC systems. So there'll be a lot of work for renovation occurring to renovate space to make it, all fit the new normal. That means bad news if you're in cement, concrete, steel, glass, but it's good news if you're in HVAC, paint, carpeting. And if you're in access equipment, we have to get this stuff into the building. So I think it's a bigger problem for earth moving than it is for access. There was challenges, but you actually got a better outcome than some of your colleagues. And then this is the home improvement space, which is just on fire right now. The only piece of the economy on fire. And you see that it stays with growth, we think, for quite a long time. Maybe out in 2025 someplace we get a contraction, but to the degree that you can supply the housing industry, that's good news. This is a view of the metro forecast we put out for the US, total construction spending. Basically, orange is bad, and the darker the green, the better off you are. There's not a lot of green in this chart, most of it being out west, and this is sort of typical. As the recovery takes place, old patterns reemerge, which is migration from Northeast, Midwest to Southeast and Southwest. And again, California, Arizona, Florida being the better outcomes here. And then finally, res, much, much better. So you can do the math and say if res has got a lot of nice dark greens and total doesn't, there's a lot of oranges and pinks in the non-res category across the entire country over the next couple of years. And then finally, to wrap up, I wanted to hit on transportation and warehousing. Obviously, our traffic is in trouble. Railroad also has got challenges. And the only really good news has been supermarkets and the big box stores, but those aren't enough to offset shutdowns of manufacturing plants. So in general, we have a downturn in trade this year, or transportation this year. It's been good news for the e-commerce companies, not so much for other supply chain transportation providers. And then despite the non-store strength, in-store has been hit harder than outsourcing can make up. And so we do see a decline in retail sales this year, which translates to that wholesale outlook, down this year a fair bit from last year. Again, the good news for the Amazons and the other big distribution centers which service consumers, but those who are servicing the manufacturing side and other impact industries, they're not seeing enough uptake to offset that decline. So that's a quick summary of all of your industries, and if you have questions, happy to take them, or drop me an email offline.
Thanks so much, Scott. We always appreciate your insight, and we do have a couple of questions for you real quick. One person asked, how significant could a federal stimulus be for the rental sector?
It could be huge. Now, federal stimulus, if we assume, again, depends on the size, numbers being thrown around are roughly $1 billion. And to put in perspective, the highway construction spending today is roughly $80 billion. $1 billion over 10 years is a lot of money. Now, that would not all be spent on highways. In fact, the discussion is a lot that would go into 5G and spreading infrastructure to rural areas where we've got challenges today. But still, if you think about in highway construction, 6-7% of spending goes into rental of equipment. If we have even say $50 billion a year, that's a lot of money. $3 billion, I guess, going into rental. That sounds high, but it'd be 300 million. Sorry, my math is off by this way. $300 million or so going to rental. We could certainly use that.
And we've got one more, Scott, please. Generally, how is the U.S. performing compared to Europe?
The U.S. is always more cyclical than Europe. So typically our downturns are steeper, our upturns are then higher. Right now we're doing better marginally. Europe has actually had more shutdowns of greater degree than we have. In the U.S., we've had big shutdowns in Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, probably California, but it's not been a national phenomenon. Whereas in Europe, Italy, Spain, UK, France, much bigger impacts. And of course, we also have a bigger housing industry. And to the degree that has been doing well on renovation activity, that's been a boom for us that really is not occurring in Europe to the same degree.
Well, thank you so much again, Scott. Very great presentation, even though it was somewhat disappointing to hear.
Economics is dismal science, so.
And now we're going to move into our last session of the day. We will take a quick pause to bring in Sarah from Birch Equipment Rental, and hold tight, please. As we're all aware, the world's largest construction equipment rental company holds a North American market share of around 13%. If we take the remaining top 4 rental companies and add up their market shares, it represents maybe around 28%. That leaves a lot of room for independence. One such independent is Washington-based Birch Equipment. Founded in 1972, Birch Equipment has 8 locations across the state of Washington and Alaska, and they employ more than 80 people. Its fleet is made up of more than 1,000 pieces of access equipment, along with a full range of telehandlers, industrial tools, warehousing pieces, forklifts, excavators, compressors, tractors. You get the gist of it. The company has been awarded a number of accolades ever since its owner, president, and CEO, Sarah Rothenbuehler, came on board in 1995 to salvage the family business. From the implementation of lean principles to restructuring work weeks, Sarah transformed the company, bringing it out of the red and back into the black. A true transformer and one who has weathered many storms, Sarah is joining me today for a discussion about the state of independent rental in North America. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Lindsay. Hey, thank you for having me and Birch Equipment, and thank you for that nice intro.
So we kind of just want to start out here. Based in Washington, that was where the COVID-19 outbreak was first reported. And it was near Kirkland, which I understand is about 2 hours south of your headquarters. So can you tell me what your reaction was to this, and how did Birch stay open, and what did your services consist of?
Well, headquarters is, we are just over an hour away from where the outbreak that made all the news is located. And then we actually have one of our facilities is probably a 15-minute drive from there. And we stayed open. A majority of our customers are commercial construction, and then we really support a lot of the infrastructure in all the communities that we work in. So we were deemed essential. We had to stay open, and we probably had the same experience as most businesses that stayed open. It was like you were wading through quicksand, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. We really did better as a company. The tighter our communication was, the more we worked together. I made sure to get to all of our facilities regularly, even more than I usually do, just so I could look people in the eye, make sure that we were all doing okay. And we really did better working. It was when we would be home on the weekends, and the news, I think, was so different than what our experiences actually were, that we'd kind of have to break out of that shell every Monday and kind of get back to the real world.
Did the news reflect maybe more doom and gloom and gruesomeness around the virus than what you were experiencing?
You bet. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So did you have to close any stores or lay off any employees during this time?
No, we needed to keep all our facilities open just for our commitment to our customers, and really for our coworkers too. We've never done a layoff. We never intend to. As an independent company, that's the flexibility that we have. We don't have to let people go or change locations to please this, to fulfill stockholder reports or to fulfill quarterly reports. We can look at business a lot more long-term as an independent. These are our communities that we live in, that we work in. We're not going anywhere. It's our job to be here and take care of each other and take care of them, take care of our customers.
Definitely. And so what measures did you have to put in place to keep your staff and yourself and family members safe and healthy during this? And which of those are going to stay put? Maybe it was a shock that something process was better this time around, that will stay put throughout maybe the coming years.
Technology, the last 25 years, the development of technology is so amazing, and so our customers already can view so much of our equipment online. They can call us, they can ask the questions, they can sign their contracts via their emails. We've had curbside service for years, where the customer can come, where the capability to be contactless has been there for years. So it really is just continuing to reintroduce that, reinforce that. The same thing as all the other businesses who knew we'd be spending so much on gloves and face masks and plexiglass. And I think that it just, as a culture, we are all so good at social distancing now, and for us, we just said, look, We don't know what COVID is, but let's not get anything. Let's not get COVID. Let's not get a flu. Let's not get a cold. We regularly distribute vitamins and vitamin C and healthy snacks and that. So we really added vitamin D to that. Anything that we could find that would help with our immunity, our immune systems. I mean, why not? Anyway, and I think a lot of that will stay in place.
So can you just kind of walk us through how business has been impacted by COVID-19, the good, the bad, the ugly, and maybe projects have paused? Are they back up? Can you give us a flavor for the Washington area?
Yeah, like for everybody, it's been a tough year. And I want to say, I bet end of March into April, May, we probably had about $40 million worth of major fleet park. And that's brutal. Luckily, we, on a lot of our major rolling stock, we install telematics. So we were able to really stay tight with our customers, make sure that the gear was secure and safe on their job sites, and then remotely lock down the equipment. So we didn't incur additional mobilization, demobilization costs, because that would have been another intense layer of costs that we weren't anticipating. It has been, you see things slowly coming back, but just like all our previous speakers are saying, commercial construction, commercial projects, there's a lot of, it takes quite a few years to get those projects online between their own financing and permitting and all the other things that come into place. And then there's a lot of commercial projects. Why would they go forward now with all the unknowns and with so much changing in the world? So, and that's a major part of our customer base. So it is funny because we really have seen the boom in the residential construction, but boy, it takes a lot of nail guns and pressure washer rentals to equal 80,000 pound excavator rentals and super booms, so.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it has been quite a conversation of some lowered expectations for next year. How do you see independents faring for 2021? Do you see further buyouts? Are the bigger going to get bigger? Or are the indies going to stay firm?
I'm probably we're not going anywhere. I'm probably the last one. I can't speak for the nationals. From an independent standpoint, the best time to buy is when no one's buying. We can really work with our manufacturers. We can really work with some of the design. There's not a lot of time for them to be changing things or R&D, but we can really work with some of the quality control issues that we've had, really intensify our training. When things drop back for us, the funny thing is, like in the recession, things dropped back and got very quiet. Through this pandemic, we've not had a break. We're actually working on a more intense basis than ever. And then a lot of the product we're turning is a lot more expensive. It takes a lot more handling to turn. So, that adds another pressure onto your business. But really, to circle back to your question, I think that's the beauty of the independent businesses. We can look at things more on the long term. We have our purchasing schedule. We analyze things very intensely. We kind of have a 5-year window where we're really watching our the equipment production, equipment performance, cost of performance, costs, revenue, and then we have like an 18-month purchasing schedule that we're just continually working. And then we're watching the used market. The used market stayed fairly stable through all of this. Our job at the end of the day is to be that place that people can depend on, whether we're talking about our coworkers or our customers. And the more chaotic the world gets, the more important it is to be that dependable place. So that's been a big part of our focus.
Absolutely. And talking about products and purchasing, a lot of rental companies cut CapEx massively this year. But in August, you invested in a bunch of new telehandlers, scissor lifts, skid steers, and you are still improving your fleet. Is there further equipment down the pipeline? Is this a way to differentiate yourself and stay on top of the game?
I think it's just like what I said before. I at the end of the day, no matter what the economy, no matter what is going on, it's our job to work on continual improvement. And it's our job to have the best quality, the best running equipment. The better shape and condition your gear is, the least costly it is to maintain. Keeping in mind the first 200 hours of most equipment can be as precarious as the last 200 hours of most equipment that you put online. But besides that, we'll continue. I mean, we're proceeding with caution, but we're gonna get through this, and we're in an incredible country, and there's businesses that no matter what the economy, they need to continue. And we try to stay real tight with them to make sure that our fleets are matching their needs, and that's their job.
Your company has been ranked as one of Washington State's top employers year over year. You've had an average retention rate of 12 years, with more than 32% of your staff having worked with the company for over 10 years. As we face a labor shortage across the construction industry as a whole, what tips can you give to employers to hang on to the good ones and hire new ones?
Yeah, I think we're all facing labor shortages, and our biggest competition is the unemployment check, perhaps, and I think everybody knows. I mean, you want to be the place that you want to show up to work at too, and I think it just gets back to being the place that people can depend on, whether you're talking about your coworkers or your customers. And I think we had a real dark time at Birch Equipment in the 90s. And I think our asset base was about 2.5 million, and we were losing well over $500,000 a year. We lost our customer base. One of the national companies came in, said, "We're going to buy you or run you into the ground." And then we turned over all of our equipment lists and customer lists, and then they set up shop next door to us and continued to work to shut us into the ground. So I think, and then I grew up on construction sites, working throughout a couple different states, and had also worked at a really young age at Birch Equipment. It was never a family business. I'm the only family member that had ever worked here. And when I came back, it was about the worst culture. It just was devastated. And I felt bad for the people working here. I felt bad for myself having to show up here. It was horrible. And I think when you start from the worst it can be, and you really work on building your systems, and really, I mean, I'm so lucky who I get to work with and call coworkers, and we're really lucky the customers we get to work with too. So there you have it.
Wonderful. I do have a few questions that have rolled in while we've been chatting, so I'm going to bounce them over to you real quick. One of them, the rental business is competitive, but have you seen it become more aggressive over the last 8 months?
I just think it's always real competitive, and there's just that pressure on that downward pressure on rental rates that make it so hard for all of us. It's just, I don't know. It just seems like that's always a challenge.
And how do you approach training, both for your own staff and externally?
We really depend on our manufacturers if we're talking about equipment training, we really depend on our manufacturers for that. And we do have a lot of staff that's qualified for internal training, and we take our entire fleet and we start every fiscal year with everybody with a blank slate on a training log, and we expect everyone to run through each of our equipment segments and go through a training series on each of those every year, because our gear is always changing. And it's really a nice time for our manufacturers to come in and explain why their equipment is the best and really help us pre-qualify issues that can come up before they do in the field.
And what is your view on new power technology? And are you replacing conventional machines with electric or hybrid units?
Well, the cost issue that came up with the previous speaker is going to answer that question. It's just like telematics. Before the big recession hit, we were really pushing hard for telematics. We could really see, we're very into Kaizen and lean management, and we could really see the benefit that telematics and being able to do more remote diagnostics before we got in the field and see how that was such a cost savings for us. And then it was too cost prohibitive until the last few years. It's the same thing with the electrical equipment. It's coming. Of course it's coming, and we'll embrace it when we can provide it at a reasonable rate and we can maintain it safely.
And that's a great segue, kind of. What is the best investment in digital technology you have made, and why?
Telematics has been an excellent investment. We created our own platform maybe 10 years ago, where our customers have 24 access to their account and can actually, when they're on the real large work sites and they're moving or renting a few hundred pieces of gear at a time, they can access our equipment fleets and run cost projections. And now with the telematics overlay, they can see the location of their equipment. And it really helps take us away from being tied to our customer on the phone for just basic questions. It allows them to have all those basic questions kind of answered online. It doesn't mean we're talking to our customers any less. It just means we're having more of those high level, more proactive conversations with them. Did I answer that very well? All right.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I had, Sarah. It's been a real pleasure being able to pick your brain, and I hope you and yours remain safe and healthy. And we look forward to having you again sometime, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone again for joining us for the ALH conference. It's been a productive and wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. I would like to thank all of my speakers and my sponsors again, including gold sponsors Skyjack and Genie, supporting sponsors Harrison Hydrogen, MOBA Mobile Automation and ZTR Control Systems, and our survey sponsor, Sirius Labs. We do have this event recording, so if you would like to pick up online, you can. We'll send links out when it's available. And you will receive a short questionnaire that I just spoke about from Sirius Labs about presentations and how the day went. If you could please fill that out, it helps us improve for next year's event, which hopefully will be in person. With that, I hope all of you stay well, and thank you to KHL and my colleagues for helping put on this wonderful event, and stay healthy. Thank you.